Hey guys, it's Erica here with the Child Care Directors Chair podcast. I am so sorry. I am going to be tongue twisted today. We are sitting down with Ruth Mealy, a Rhode Island family child care owner and a children's author, to discuss the vital role of kindness and how it plays in early childhood education. In a world that often seems divided, Ruth shares her insights on how teaching children to not only excel academically, but to also grow with empathy, respect, and kindness, and how essential it is. As we explore practical ways to weave kindness into both your teaching and your work culture, from creating a compassionate classroom to fostering a positive, supportive environment for staff. So join us as we highlight why kindness should be a core value in your childcare setting and how it can shape the next generation in profound ways. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm fairly happy to be here, Erica. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. So I met Ruth at a vendor fair probably about a month ago at the
Mhm.
Crown Plaza, and it was a craft show. Actually, I was so excited to see some things for kids, so I went quickly right on over to that booth to see what might be there for my students, and I found Ruth, and I thought it was so delightful. She had a student with her at the table who helped write a book with her. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
Amelia. Yes.
yeah.
And
So
it
that
was the Power
was.
of Respect book.
Yeah, yeah. So, for the folks who are listening, if you've ever wondered how teaching kindness can transform your classroom program and the children you serve, today's episode is going to help you with that. So, Ruth, tell folks a little bit about your journey of how are a family child care provider and an author. Tell us a little bit more about how you started that quest.
So my journey as a daycare provider and preschool teacher was when I had my oldest son, Evan, 34 years ago. I didn't want to leave him. And I thought the best thing that I could do was to stay home with him, but I obviously had to supplement my income. And so I took all the classes and opened up a daycare. And that was in Seattle, Washington. And as the years went on, I just learned more and more about being a provider, being a teacher, being that role model that all these little kids look up to. And it's been 34 years of pure bliss. Like, I really enjoy every single day. Getting to know the kids. I learn so much from them, just as much as they learn from me.
Yeah. And I think so many folks that are listening to this can really relate to that, not wanting to leave their child. And we kind of joked about that at the table because I do think that that is a big part of the journey for so many of us.
Mhm.
I think when you have that sense of clarity, I think that's really what makes you a good child care provider as well, because that feeling doesn't ever go away. Like you remember how hard it is to even have the thought of leaving your child. And we want so much for our own children that we really fill that role in a way, for when parents are at work. So,
Yeah, and looking back in my life, I've always been that person, whether it started out as being a babysitter at a very, very young age, being the second child of four children and, kind of taking that motherly role. And then I became a tour guide. And so I took care of, people on bus tours and tours and then went into, not wanting to leave my child, being able to teach him what I thought was important to teach. And a lot of that was social emotional learning, which we didn't know those words back then.
yeah.
That's, kind of a new terminology. So, but it teaches lifelong lessons. And that's what I wanted him to have, was that foundation. So that's where I started.
Yeah. So, in your experience, how does teaching kindness at a young age influence a child's overall development?
So I think that one of the things that kindness teaches is empathy. I think that's a taught characteristic because you have to learn how to be empathetic. It doesn't
Yeah.
come naturally. And I think that when you teach kindness at a really young age, they become more empathetic. They understand their emotions, which helps them to be more empathetic. They can also regulate those emotions. So if a situation occurs, they literally can figure it out, and they have like, okay, I feel anxious right now, and what can I do to make that feeling, be more aware of it. And that's okay. Take deep breaths, and that will take me to a place that I can actually make that conscious choice of what I want to do, or what situation I might be in. It also helps with their peers, right? When they see somebody being empathetic towards them, it helps them to be more empathetic towards somebody else. So a lot of it is being in the moment and actually teaching these things through self-awareness. So if I'm kind, they're going to be kind. So I also think that it helps with self-esteem. I think that when you build children's self-esteem, they can accomplish anything. Even if they're scared at trying something new, they have that little bit of push that will help them to maybe be more kind or be more successful. I know in my preschool daycare, when the kids can catch, we have charts, and they get stickers for kind acts or things that they think, that I feel is important for them. But they can also say, you know what? Rose just did a really nice thing for me. She helped me, clean up the toys. I think she deserves a sticker. So I think when you get them involved as well, they want to be more kind. They want to share that, what they know. And I think that helps their self-esteem as well. I also think it makes them a little bit more resilient too, when they're adapting to those challenges and they overcome them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love helping kids really have self-confidence, because I think as they get a little older, it gets a little tougher. And there are certain ages, right, that you really need to feel strong in
Mm-hmm.
your sense of self. It's
Yep.
important all the time. But, those teenage years, if you don't have really good self-esteem, those years are really hard. And so it starts, when they're young, to feel really confident.
And to give them that foundation so they know, okay, because our instinct is going to go back to that, right? If they've been learning this all these years, and they've been acting them out, and they've been, that's going to kick in because of those trying moments that they might be in, those challenges. And so that's what's going to kick in, and hopefully, get them to the next choice that they have to make, and they'll make that good choice.
Yeah. How can educators balance academic goals with social and emotional and building character through kindness? Because they're equally important.
So I think that like integrating character building academics can be a key, right? You
Yeah.
integrate it in your everyday life. It's not just something you turn on or turn off. So reading books, singing songs, encouraging, like even team project, right? I will say to the kids, okay, it's block time. Let's build the biggest block we can possibly build, tower, and they'll do it together. Or puzzle time, right? Where they're going to try and work with each other and make this huge floor puzzle. So that's a lot of team building, and that helps them to, again, build their self-esteem. They want to be kind to one another. So here you go. Here's a piece of puzzle I found that might match such and such. Also, I think even at a very young age, I have a 1-year-old, and every time she does something, the kids will unify and clap their hands for her and say, yay. And the other day, for the first time, she did something, and then she looked at them and she said, yay. And it was so clear, like, that she has learned this behavior because she's been encouraged. So I think that other children encouraging one another can really make a big difference, because it's their peers, right? It's not just an adult encouraging them.
Yeah.
It's another person that's their size and age. So I
Yeah.
think that has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah. As you say that, it makes me think about some of the students at my program, and they're really good at encouraging students that they see in their classroom that might be different than them
Mm-hmm.
for
Yep.
multiple reasons. And there are some students in our class that they're very protective of. Um, so
Yep.
yeah, you're right. Empathy is a learned thing, and the more that is encouraged, the more that is acknowledged. And it feels good to be nice, right?
Yeah,
It feels
it
a lot
does.
nicer to be nice. It feels a lot nicer when you smile at someone, they smile back, than they,
Yep.
a scowl. So yeah, I think being nice also helps us feel good too,
Mhm.
So I think,
It's that rippling effect, right?
yeah, definitely
You
is.
throw that pebble and you're going to affect a lot of people. And when
Yeah.
you do it with kindness, you're making the world a better place. And I tell those kids all the time. Sometimes that little thing that you just didn't mean a whole
Hmm.
lot to you, but it certainly meant a whole lot to the other
To the other,
person.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it isn't just children. I mean, this is
No.
really true for all human beings, right? We
Yep.
all thrive in environments where people are respected, where they're kind, where they're loving, where people
Yep.
communicate with each other in a way that um, is thoughtful. So, yeah. Why do you believe that cultivating kindness is especially crucial in today's world? And maybe how can we prepare children to be academically successful and compassionate?
So I think that, I mean, we live in a very divided world and
Mhm.
it can be very overwhelming at times. And I think that what kindness does is it builds the bridges, it teaches the children to see humanity in others and in themselves. So when kids feel emotionally safe and support, and part of that is building boundaries, right? If they understand where their boundaries are. And I say this all the time because, some parents will say to me, well, so and so is just not doing, picking up their toys at nighttime. It takes 20 minutes for them to do it. And I'm like, well, you know, what is happening at the same time? They're like, well, the TV's on, or, my husband will come in and say something to them. And if you allow them to just divert, and not give them the clear boundaries, like, okay, we have 10 minutes to clean up this room because then we're going to do such and such. And I think that's so important for parents and for teachers and educators and just people in general. If you give the boundaries to the kids, they're going to feel safe. But if you don't have boundaries, they don't know what to do. So should I clean up or well, now dad just told me to do this or mom told me to do that. So they're very confused. And that's when you get a lot of defiance or you get a lot of kids, not being so kind to maybe their siblings. So I think that's something else that you need to teach them is that, what? Boundaries do keep you safe. And if you follow the boundaries, we can deviate with some things, but other things we can't. And I think that's really important for kids to understand. So I think that with the world the way it is right now, um, if you keep things as routine or as easily explained to them, they'll get it. If and honesty is another thing. I truly believe that you have to be honest with a child. You have to know how much to tell them because some things they just won't understand.
Mm.
And so that will just muddy the waters even more. But if you're honest with them, they know they can come back to you and get an honest answer. So,
Yeah. That's something that I'm living in my own life right now. So my daughter has a foster child that lives with us, and he does need that safety and security and structure and routine. And there are some things that we're able to tell him, and there are some things that we are not. And then I also think going back to sometimes we have to tell children like this is the time limit, this is what I need from you. And when
mhm,
you work with children who have trauma, you have to understand that their response may look totally different than
right.
other children, and those children honestly need the most empathy and kindness because
Mhm.
they have so many more big emotions and feelings, and
Yeah.
maybe some of their thoughts are skewed. So think about too when you're talking with children what other supports might they need, or how you might have to differentiate what you're talking about.
Right, exactly. Yes. And
Yeah.
more tools for them. Deep
Mm.
breathing is a really great tool. And when a child's upset, they can't think because they're not
Yeah.
thinking from their prefrontal cortex. They're thinking from behind. And so
Hmm.
you've got to get those deep breaths in. And once you get those deep breaths in, it puts them into the prefrontal cortex where they can make that
Yeah.
choice. And sometimes they'll make the right choice and sometimes they'll make the wrong choice, but they'll learn from that. And I believe that that's where we as providers and educators can turn around and make that situation a positive one instead of a negative one.
Yeah. So, as an author, let's talk a little bit about your books. You've written some books that touch on themes of empathy and kindness. How do you use your writing to reinforce these values with the children, and what impacts have you seen?
So all of my books are from real life situations, from kids that either gave me information I've researched with, or I've just talked to, or I've observed, whether it's in my own daycare or whether it's in another daycare or another setting. And I take what their perspective, because I believe that if they can see themselves in the book, then that book's going to be able to help them. Right. Or if they can see a friend in that book. So I try to have a lot of diversity in my books. I try to have a lot of things that kids would say. As you know, as a provider, as a teacher, there's a special way that we speak that allows children to understand us in a very simple way. And so a lot of what I write is that same simple way. It's not bigger words. It's not, one book I did write and you had to use, it was an ABC book and had to use a little bit bigger words than what the age group was. But at the very back, I put a dictionary so that they could understand what the words meant in that context, because there's a lot of different meanings on some. So, and my journey started off in the pandemic, like many people. My first one was The Power of Positivity, the ABCs of a Pandemic, because I was keeping track with my kids on a daily basis through Zoom when we were shut down. And one Friday I asked them, what are you doing this weekend? And they had these sad looks on their faces and said, we can't do anything because that virus is out there. And my heart broke because I was like, these kids don't understand it. We as adults had a hard time understanding, why is this happening? What's going on? When is everything going to open up again? All these questions. And they had questions too. So that night I went to bed and I just could not sleep. And I started writing down all the positive things that were happening in the world. And within a week, I had written this book and self-published it because I needed to get it out there as fast as I could. And I used little things in there to help the kids to open up. Orbit is my main character. And he's the world, and he's got a Band-Aid on the top of his head. And that was because he was born in the pandemic. And he was hidden. I hid him throughout the book on every page. And the kids would have to find him. And then it would get them to start talking. So a lot of schools used it in their classrooms to help kids understand, to help them understand what was going on, or to ask the questions. Because if you don't ask the right questions, you can't get the right answers. So that was helping them. So that's how my actual journey of being an author came about. I always wanted to be an author, but I just never knew how to go about doing it. So, and then that's when the next 4 books came, very quickly, actually, over the last 3 years. But yeah. And I decided that character traits were really important for kids to understand. So every topic that came up was something we were struggling with in daycare. We were trying the power of kindness through the eyes of children. We were actually at a snap table and somebody said something that wasn't so kind. And I'm like, oh, opportunity. Let's talk about kindness. And that's how that book came about. And all the examples came from those kids.
Wow. Can you share an example of a moment where kindness, either from a child or staff member, had a profound effect on your program?
So I always think about this because there's so many examples that I come up with. I guess when you constantly look for kindness, it automatically comes. So my third book is The Power of Gratitude, and it's an ABC book. And I researched over 100 children for that book. And I took the most unique words. So A for acorn, or D was for darkness. And I made that into the book so that kids could look at it. So for instance, this one little boy, he was afraid of the dark. And I asked him, well, why were you afraid of the dark? And he explained it. And then I said, he said, one night my dad and I went out and we laid on the grass and we looked up at the sky and we saw the stars. And ever since then, anytime I get anxious or I feel that tightness, I will turn around and I will think of that moment, and it calms me down. So we use that book in November a lot. Every day in the month of November, we do a different alphabet. And then the kids will run around the room trying to find another word for, D. It could be a picture of a dog, or it could be a picture of a dragon or whatever. And then we reiterate by saying, well, why are you grateful for that word? Why are you grateful for a dog? Because they sit by your lap and they love you and da-da-da. So we started this 2 Thanksgivings ago, so 2 Novembers ago. And I had the same kids for both years. So the first year, they were every day at lunchtime, we would sit around the table and go, what are you grateful for? And they would say, well, I'm grateful for my mom and dad because they love me. So very simple ways. Well, the same kids that were there that year, the next year, I noticed, and we would do this every single day for the rest of the year. Because one of my kids said to me, I went home and I started doing gratitudes at nighttime, and I think we should continue, not just because November's over. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So we started doing it every day at lunchtime, and they would start it up. So a year later, we're doing gratitudes. And this one little girl says to me, well, let's do gratitudes. And they went around the table, and I said, what are you grateful for? And she said, I'm grateful for the rain because we have not had rain in a long time, and our trees and flowers need them. And it blew my mind. Here they go from my mom and dad, which everything is my mom and dad, as a provider, you're
Sure.
like, that's their world, to rain because she hadn't rained for like weeks. And she was right. And I was like, wow. So when you practice gratitudes every day, eventually your neurons in your brain are going to reconnect. Mm-hmm. And those things, now you're going to start to see the gratitude in everything instead of the negativity. And so I think that was one of those moments when I was like, wow, they're getting it. And that just made me so happy. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I think the adult listeners should also heed much of the advice in that little nugget there because, yes, so often adults also can get really tied up into the negative, especially right now, right? I mean, I almost don't even want to go on social media anymore because it's literally just negative. So nice to hear and see and feel, gratitude when it's around you.
Yeah, and even to the point of if you're in a bad mood, right? And they mention something that they're grateful for, you're like, oh, yeah, I am grateful for that. And that can change your whole world. So it's, gratitude, I don't think gets enough credit.
Yeah.
But I truly think it's something that if you started doing it every day, even when you wake up in the morning and just say, I'm grateful to wake up this morning because this is what I'm going to attempt to do. And whether you do it or not, it gives you a purpose. And so you can get that gratitude even from just failing at it because you're learning something from it.
Yeah, so that's a perfect segue. So you talk about failing, right? So what challenges do you face when trying to foster kindness in a childcare setting, and how do you overcome them?
So I think one of the biggest challenges is young children are still learning to control their impulses, right? They're very reactive. And that's our instinct in us, right? We get fearful or we get excited. Even the positive characteristics that we get excited and we might knock somebody's block over and then that child gets mad and so impulses and conflict will happen, right? So what I try to do is I try to model a positive role playing and then just use gentle reminders. Sometimes it's just one word. Sometimes it's just a question, right? To get their mind to think about it. So I think that, impulse control can be hard, but if you model it or be a role model for it or use those gentle reminders, that eventually the patience and the consistency will come into factor. And those will be keys. The other thing that I always try to do is include the family. So there might be something that happened during the day, and I will text the parent and let them know. And I will try not to bring it up in front of the kids because we've already solved it. We've already accomplished that, but I don't want the parents not to know what's happening. And I feel like, and my parents are very supportive, and so they back me up. And so I will text them, let them know the situation in case it comes up in a conversation that night. Then they won't be blindsided. But most of the time, the parents will just reinforce it with, again, the positive message, being kind, and reiterating some of the things that we have done in preschool. So I think that when, kids are learning, right? We want them to stumble now so that they don't stumble in the future when it's irreversible. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So for listeners, as we start to wrap up, for listeners who want to create more kindness focused environment in their center, what are the first steps that they can take today to start moving towards that path?
So I think it's to start small, right? I think it should be age appropriate. So, a 5-year-old might understand something more than a 2-year-old. So you want to start small. You want to model that kindness. You want to model that. And you want to also point out when somebody else is doing something good, which my kids are really good at now. Like they will point out if so-and-so was kind to them, or so-and-so helped them with something, or so-and-so answered a question right, and they'll give them cheers like, yeah, that was a good answer. So I think that's important, right? I also think that, reading, I'm a big adversary about reading, like not just because I'm an author, but I've always been like that. I've always wanted to use stories to help children to understand different topics. So reading can help you find books about kindness, find books about celebrating the kind acts that they're doing, just acknowledging them, because acknowledgement and appreciation go hand in hand. When you acknowledge something and you're appreciating them, it makes them feel good. So therefore that self-esteem starts to go up again. Also, I mentioned recognizing the behavior. And when you do see it, and whether it's positive or negative, you kind of act on that. You kind of mention it, and for kids, one word answer is perfectly fine because they get it. When you start talking way too much, you get this glazed over look like you've lost them. So it's better to use the 1 or 2 words to make your point. Also, I think a big part of creating more kindness is creating this space in your day to talk about your feelings, right? And acknowledge them. Because most people, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, you just want to be heard. You just want to have that feeling like somebody heard me. They didn't have to solve my problem, but they heard me. So that's another form of kindness. When you wait and hold, what they call it, hold space for somebody else. So somebody else is talking and you listen to them attentively, not when you're doing something else or you're on your phone or, one of my rules is I ask the parents, even if you're going to be late, I'd rather you stay in your car, take care of your phone call before you walk through the door, because your children have waited all day for you. They don't want to wait again. They see you, they want to give you a hug, they want to give you, and that strengthens their relationship with a parent and a child. And then I think consistency. Consistency builds over time. And I think that helps a child to feel safe and to feel free enough to be kind to each other. I think that makes a big difference when you see somebody being consistent on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so that person is reliable. That person is a kind person. I can trust them.
Yeah, that's a lot of great tips there. Is there anything that you want to leave the listeners that I didn't ask you?
I think that I think as reading, like my book series is about positivity, kindness, gratitude, empathy, and feelings. And the last one is about respect. And I think the reason why they are successful is because they come from young children. They come from what they're thinking. They see different cultures in my books. They see a really fun character that Orbit will ask a question and allow the child to answer it in the book. And I think that if you want to help your child to understand some of these difficult topics, I think the series is a really good solid series. We'll be coming out with a couple more books that I think will touch more topics on character traits. But for now, I think that it's a good foundation for parents, for grandparents, for teachers, for educators to look into and see if it's something that fits with their kids.
Okay. So, for those of you who are listening, if you are ready to take your childcare program to the next level with a focus on kindness, Ruth is so passionate about empowering educators, as you can tell, and families to build more compassion and caring environments. So if you want to learn more about fostering kindness in your program, in your work culture, or your teaching practices, make sure you connect with Ruth in person at the Early Childhood Empowerment Conference, May 2nd through the 4th. She'll be joining us on Saturday for Vendor Day at the Crown Plaza in Warwick, Rhode Island. She will be in the vendor area. You'll be able to find her very easily. Her booth is wonderful. She's ready to share her expertise in her books on kindness, trust, and all of the things compassion. So don't miss the opportunity to grow and connect with amazing childcare professionals just like Ruth. Your tickets are available. They're waiting for you. Click the link below, reserve your spot. And as always, remember, it's the small details that make a big impact on the success of your childcare business. That's all for today. Bye.
Thank you.